Hello and welcome to our podcast and video brought to you by CEO Apparel in conjunction with Kuyasha Media. Now it is another week, meaning we do have another guest with us. I am joined by Nkululeko Tselane. He is a social activist and entrepreneur as well as a former student leader from this university. Now by profession, he is a lawyer as well as a football coach. And then in terms of his entrepreneurship, he is the CEO and founder of Kuyasha Media. And he's with me today. It's my boss, guys. Hello, boss man.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. How are you doing?
Very good.
I have to say that it's weird to see you sitting on this side.
Yeah,
It's
actually
behind
weird.
the camera.
It's weird being this side, you know. It's so nice being on the other side of the camera because then you can direct, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice, man. You've got a new venue, it's cozy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very happy to be here.
That's amazing.
Thank you for having me.
I don't think I had a choice. But it's alright. Okay,
Sure.
let's talk about this collaboration between you as well as CEO Apparel, between us and
Sure.
CEO Apparel. What brought that about, and why did you decide that you wanted to work with a brand like CEO Apparel and bring them something like this?
Sure. Well, I think as Kuyasha Media, right, what we try to do as much as possible is that we try to work with brands and entities that we believe in, right? And we like their vision and their values and what they stand for. And I think CEO Apparel is one way before we even started Kuyasha Media, it's something that I always like really believed in and I really liked, you know. It's really dope when you're walking around and then you have that Mr. CEO cap on, you know, and then someone will be like, oh, sure, how are you doing, Mr. CEO?
Yeah.
You know, it's just a brand. So I think before this even, you know, I've always given CEO Apparel a lot of like free advertising, like just telling people how dope it is, and I just was really excited that Morena was willing to work with us. You know? So yeah.
That's amazing. Now, let's look at Kuyasha Media and you starting the entity. What do you think was one of the most important things that you needed to have on lockdown before you were like, okay, we have this digital strategy and content creation firm that is Kuyasha Media?
Well, I think first of all, I don't see myself as an entrepreneur per se. You know, I see myself more as a problem solver and an executor. So then there's lots of different projects and passions that I want to push. And at the time, I think Kuyasha Media and entrepreneurship was the best vehicle to get that done, and still is the best vehicle to get that done. So really, it was just looking at the scenery, looking at the playing field and the landscape, and say, okay, how best can I operate in that field, and what is the best vehicle to operate in that field? Yeah.
Now, what need do you think you're covering with, having Kuyasha Media?
Well, I mean, there's a few. So Kuyasha Media has 3 branches, right? So we've got social activism and projects, we've got small businesses, and we've got personal branding, which you're actually the head of. Yeah. So with each one, I mean, the need that we're addressing is slightly different. You know, so for project and social activism, one thing that I think hinders a lot of social activism is having to beg for money. You know, so if, for example, I'm getting money from a major bank, then it kind of hinders the way that I can pursue my activism, because I can't conflict with whatever agendas they have. So in terms of the project and social activism, it's also like to give activism that freedom to be genuine, you know, and to be actual activism. And also, what I found is that a lot of activism projects struggle in terms of getting the publicity that they need and getting the correct media coverage and all of that, because they don't have the money also. So that was also the need that I thought that was very important to address. So then when it comes to small businesses, what happens there is that I think a lot of small businesses can't afford to get the media strategy and the content creation that they deserve, but they've got really, really great brands, great visions, great values, you know. So then that's also where Kuyasha comes in, where we provide a very affordable service for small businesses that we believe in and that are building to something great. Personal branding, very similar to that in 2018, your social media presence is your CV. So a lot of people need to double down a lot on that, on their personal branding and all of that, in order to reach more people, to get more work, to make a bigger impact, because we're very heavy on impact. Although we are obviously a for-profit entity, but we're very heavy on impact, and the impact that we're going to be putting out there in society.
Now, you said about, especially small entities, that sometimes they don't have the money to get the services that we offer them. But how then how does Kuyasha Media then afford to provide them with these services?
Don't question. You see, one thing that I really, really like about Kuyasha Media and the team is that we're very resourceful. We're able to do the most with very, very little. So, I mean, that's also why I built the team that I built, because I know that we have that in your personal capacities, you've done a lot with very little. So this team is very good at executing little. So for some of the content we've produced, for example, we've just used a cell phone. That's using that's using our resources to the best of their abilities. So that's how we keep our costs down, by trying to leverage as much as we can. I mean, this venue it's very dope. Thank you very much to the AGOG gallery for hooking it up. So it's those sorts of things, using that sort of social capital also, and using your resourcefulness.
And then you spoke about your team. Like, what is the importance for you in a team?
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Come on. And who said that? Can credit please be given?
I don't know, but whoever said that was speaking the gospel.
Okay, originally, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who said it, but I'm the one who said it to you.
I'm gonna give you that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna give you that.
Credit where it's due, people. Credit where it's due.
So yeah, I mean, we've got a really, really, really dope team. Very hungry. That's one thing I love about this team. They put in a lot of work, a lot of effort. We all have different things that we're doing. Some of us are studying, some of us are working. So there's a lot of hunger that goes with the team. And one thing I like about this team is that I've watched them and I've worked with them. So for example, our Chief Operations Officer, Willie, he was the chairperson of the All Residents Council. He was the chairperson of these residents. Zanande,
Tell me about me.
You are director of personal branding, and I've watched you work as the chairperson of your residence, Jubilee. And then Regis, who's our chief financial officer, he was also the treasurer of its junction. And then Warren is someone who I've watched very religiously in terms of the type of content you produce. So I really watched everyone to see, okay, how do you work? I've worked with you on these sorts of things, and I believe that you're very rational in the way you approach things, very pragmatic, and I think that was very important for me. That number one, it's people that I like, Number two, it's people that I think have a lot of potential outside of me, I'm going to sing your praises. I genuinely think you're very elite in what you do. You're very good at what you do,
Thank you.
And it's, as much as I like you, you're good, So that was very important also with the team. It's not just about choosing friends, It's about choosing people that are highly competent and very hungry,
All I have to say to that is dream work makes the team work.
Is it dream work makes the team work, or teamwork makes the team work?
Now I'm showing that it probably didn't come up with me originally, but it's fine.
Yeah.
You spoke a lot on your team members being leaders. Do you think leadership and entrepreneurship are synonymous?
I do, because as a leader, I think your first role is you're a problem solver, and I think that's what entrepreneurship is. I think that's also why I found it kind of easy to move into this space, because I see myself as a problem solver. So I think first and foremost, the job of a leader is to see what has to be done and do it. And that's what an entrepreneur does. An entrepreneur says, what is the need? How do I address that need? So I think leadership and entrepreneurship they're almost synonyms.
Now, what about people who haven't found themselves in leadership roles? Are we saying that more likely than not, you don't have that entrepreneurial blood in you?
I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying if you've led, you probably do. And if you've led well, you probably do.
Yeah.
So everything is a balance of probabilities, I can't be 100% sure with anything, but what you have to do is you have to look for certain characteristics in a person. And then and if they tick more of those characteristics, it's more likely that they suit that particular thing.
I get you. Now let's look at working versus doing your own thing. So working versus being an entrepreneur. You were a lawyer. You worked at a certain law firm. why stop, and what are the benefits of stopping and just looking at you pushing Kuyasha Media?
Look, I think in life you have to be willing to take a risk, and you really have to believe in yourself. There's no guarantees with anything, right? But you have to look at things from a very pragmatic sense. If you're in a corporate job, the honest truth is you don't have time to do anything else. You don't have the energy. You're up at probably like 5 in the morning, start work maybe 6, 7, depending on the workload. Then you work until like 9 p.m. When you get home, you want to sleep, you want to rest. You need to sleep, you need to rest. So it's impossible to balance the two to a full extent. And I think wherever you are, you need to be able to see yourself there long term. So particularly when I was at a law firm, I didn't envy any of the people above me, and I think that's important. That should be something you strive towards. You should be able to look at them and say, oh, I want that.
Yes.
I want your job. But if you don't, why are you there? And I think for me, I always knew I wasn't going to stay there for long. I knew that it was really just to accumulate capital and then put it out into my different things, whether it's my football coaching, whether it's business, whether it's all of those sort of things. So and I think that's something I've also noticed with a number of other entrepreneurs. A lot of them are in their jobs because they're trying to accumulate capital so that they can actually do what they want to do. And what gives them that life, and I think that's very important.
So when we're looking at the suitabilities and the hours and the morenas and the kanyas and etc., it is mostly about accumulating that capital.
A lot of them, and I think if you look at a lot of the people we've had on the podcast, a lot of them are working and they're pushing this on the side because they know that their businesses are probably not at the point where it can sustain them alone. So they have to kind of like find that balance. If you want to, you'll find that balance.
Okay, now I've got a bone to pick with you. You're speaking about balance, but what about the loss of time and energy that you lose when you're doing the coaching and when you're doing footballing? What about that?
I mean, that's what makes me happy. I think balance. You see, while you have to work as hard as you can, and you have to grind your face off. At the same time, you need to have some sort of escapism, and you have to find something that genuinely is just a break from the grind in that sense, right? Although soccer for me is also a grind, but it's different in that sense, And I attribute a lot of my leadership skills to soccer because that also gives me an environment to test things out. So actually, I consider myself a leadership theorist. So I read a lot of leadership, what motivates people. So being in that control space, I can say, okay, what sort of tricks and skills can I play around with and make them suit me and make them inspire and motivate. So I don't think I would be as good as I am at leading. I don't know, you can tell me if I'm good or not.
You're good. You're good.
So I don't think I would be as good as I am without that space to experiment and to try things out.
So I would also say, just to add on to what you say, because I was a sports girl. I feel like I still am a sports girl. Once you're a sporty person, I feel like that never leaves you. Sports also just emphasizes that teamwork makes the dream work, and you just start to see that there's certain strategies that you can put in place in order to make something that you want to happen and truly work for you. So kudos to you, boss man. Kudos to you. Now, going back to Kuyasha Media, challenges that you faced, challenges that we faced in bringing this out and making it work.
Well, so Kuyasha is a startup, right? So our resources are very limited. So the first thing was trying to get the most out of the limited resources that we have. I think the second challenge that we've had, because I think we've got a very competent team, so that attracts a lot of business for us. So I think what we've really struggled with is capacity. There's only so many projects that 5, 6 people can take on and still give people the best quality. I think there's a lot of areas that we could have done a lot better for the CEO Apparel, for example. But because we overextended ourselves, we weren't able to give the best that we can, right? So I think what's very important is that in terms of scaling, because everyone wants to scale and get bigger, Kuyasha, I believe, is going to be the biggest media company on this continent, right? At a certain point, and very soon. I'm saying this on camera so in a few years' time I can come back and say, I told you so. Accountability, So I think what we've really learned is that it's important to increase your capacity before you take on a new project, instead of trying to take on new projects and while you have those new projects trying to increase your capacity. I think even at a certain point we had to put a moratorium on taking on a new project because it was just too much. I like the support and the faith people have in us, But then if we're taking on too much, we're not going to execute to the best of our abilities, and then that is going to damage the brand and our reputation.
So people, when you're also making choices for your businesses and for your entities, make sure that you know what capacity you as an entity can hold together, and stick to that. Don't go over, don't go too low, but just stick to what you know that you can handle. Otherwise, you could damage your brand.
Yeah.
Now, you've spoken about having limited resources. You've spoken about if sometimes you have to leave your work and you have to leave that firm that you're a part of to push what you want to push. Now, some people would say that where you are and having stopped all of those things because of the connections that you hold and because you are at Tselane. What would you say to those people?
Look, I've never ran away from the privilege I have in that sense. I know, look, the conditions for black people in this country are tough on a whole and in general, right? So obviously I'm not blind to the fact that if my family needed me to survive now, I probably wouldn't have been able to start this. But I'm not in that position, and I'm going to make the most out of it. So I think at the same time, we're trying to do that for our kids. We want our kids to be in the position where they can pursue greater projects without having to worry about falling into poverty. And my parents come from extreme poverty. Like they used to use potato bags for clothes. Like that's how bad it was. And they were grinding so that I could be in this position. So I think that's what we should try and do, and build that social capital for ourselves. We all met, this whole team, or the majority of the team met at Wits University, which in itself shows the social capital that we all have. If we never went to Wits University, would there be a Kuyasha? So it's understanding your privilege, but not using that as an excuse or a crutch. I could say, oh no, my dad's got me, he's gonna sort me out. Which is not true, and which is a bad mentality to have, So it's about acknowledging, but like working with the best that you have, making the most of it.
And making it work. Well, thank you so much, boss man. I feel like that's a beautiful way to end it and just to close up.
We're done already.
What else do you want to speak? I don't want to get into trouble. You're the boss.
No, it's your platform. You see, a part of teamwork is understanding like the division, So I'm very grateful that you had me on the podcast today.
Thank you. Okay, so basically what he's saying is, I'm the boss now. So in this area, I'm the boss. So thank you very much, Mr. Tselane, for joining us. But that was just another episode, another fulfilling and really great episode of the CEO podcast as well as a video. But no worries, there's going to be another one next week.